Hello, this is lesson 9.5, Slope-Intercept form. Please write the title at the top of your page. Pause the video to do so, and also split your paper into 4 sections, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, now on the upper left of your notes, please write what you see on your screen. It says slope-intercept form, and in this red box here, this is the slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. And the m is going to represent the slope, so the m will be a number. And the b, if there is a number here, it'll be a plus b. That's our y-intercept. And keep in mind, if it's a minus a number, that would mean that the y-intercept is negative. Pause the video to finish copying it down, and then press play when you're ready to continue. Please pause now. Okay, now beneath the slope-intercept form, these are the steps I want you to write down on how to graph using that slope-intercept form. So you'll have to pause the video to copy it all down, but I'm just going to go through it real quick while you're writing it. So to graph, the first step is you're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, and we're going to use that form above. And then step 2 says you're going to plot the y-intercept on the y-axis. So that'll be your first point. Plot the y-intercept on the y-axis. Step 3, you're going to use the slope to find 2 more points. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But slope here is rise over run. And I'll explain that when we get to the graphing. And then step 4, you're then going to draw the line. Okay, pause the video to continue copying it down. And when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, on the upper right, I want you to first write problem number 1, y equals negative 3x plus 1, and we're only going to identify the slope and the y-intercept on these equations. So for number 1, remember if the slope-intercept form looks like this, the slope is always the number that's in front of the x, and then the y-intercept is always the number that's being added to the x term. So here, the slope is going to be negative 3, and the y-intercept is 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and write it like this using m for slope, b for y-intercept. Now let's look at problem 2. On problem 2, I want you to write this equation. Number 2 is y equals 2x. So remember, again, the slope is the number in front of x. Okay, so the slope here is the 2. The y-intercept, it's what's being added to x. And right now, there's nothing being added to x. So what we could write is we could write a plus 0. Go ahead and write that in, and then that would make your slope 2, your y-intercept 0. Okay, so write that down and then box your answer. Okay, for problem number 3. On problem number 3, I want you to copy down this equation, 6x plus 3y equals negative 3. And on this one, we can't identify the slope and the y-intercept yet because it's not in the right form. For it to be in the right form, we need to get y by itself. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change this equation around so that we get y all by itself. So the first thing I want you to do is circle the variable and draw a line underneath the equal sign. And you want to get rid of the 6x first by subtracting 6x to each side. So go ahead and write minus 6x, and on this side here, those 6x's are going to cancel out. They're going to become zeros. And on the right side, I put the 6x over here to the right of the negative 3 because they're not like terms. So now our new equation is going to look like this. It'll be 3y equals negative 3 minus 6x. Okay, and now we're almost done. We still have to get y by itself, and right now y has the 3 in front. So now our next step is to divide this side by 3, and on this side we're going to divide by 3, but each term is going to be divided by 3 separately. So it will look like this. Go ahead and write down the dividing by 3 on each of those terms. And now what's going to happen here is you're going to finally get y by itself. So we're going to, the 3's are going to become a 1y. Okay, and now we're going to have our new equation, which is going to be y equals, and this will be a -1 minus 2x. And what I like to do is I always like to have the x term in front. So I'm going to move this x term in front of this -1, and my equation is going to look like this. Y equals -2x minus 1, and we can identify our slope and y-intercept. Our slope is the number in front of x, and our y-intercept is what's being added to x, which in this case it's a -1, a -1. So this is your answer to number 3. Okay, so now we're going to use the slope-intercept form to graph this line. And then these graphs here, you can get them on my PowerSchool website and print it out and then cut and paste them in your notes. If you don't want to do that, or if you don't have a printer, you can just use a ruler or a straight edge and create your own coordinate plane and then label your x-axis and y-axis. And what we're going to do is also we're going to follow these steps that we wrote at the top of the top box. And the first step says we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So looking at this equation here, our slope is 1/2, our y-intercept is -4. So let's write that down. Okay, so now on our y-intercept, that's our second step, is we're going to plot the y-intercept on the graph. So the -4 means on the y-axis here, we're going to place our first point. Okay, so now we're on step 3. We're ready to use the slope to find 2 more points, and the slope is rise over run. So next to this 1/2, I'm going to write the words rise and run. So because our numerator is 1, that means our rise is going to be 1 unit up. Rise means up or down. And then because our denominator is 2, that's our run. And because 2 is positive, we're going to go to the right. If 2 were negative, we'd go to the left. So how we're going to use that is on this point right here, we're going to rise up 1. So I'm going to rise up 1. Go up 1, and then we're going to then do the run of 2. So you go 1, 2, and that means our second dot is right here. Okay, so now we are going to do that again starting at this new point. We're going to do the same slope. We're going to do a rise of 1, so we go up 1, and then we do a run of 2, 1, 2, and then this is our third point. Okay, so now once you have 3 points, I tell kids 3 points is a good enough amount to be able to draw your line intersecting those points. So we're going to draw a straight line, use a ruler or a straight edge to go through the points and to the edges of your graph. So this is our line. Okay, now we're going to try problem number 5. Before we do that, let's do a secret code picture. I want you to draw a mountainside in the margin here to make sure you're listening. Okay, problem 5 is y equals -3x. So first let's identify the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so the slope is -3 and the y-intercept is 0 because we add that plus 0. Now we're going to plot our first point. Our first point is going to be at the y-intercept at 0. So here's the y-axis. So at 0 here will be our first point of our line. Now we're going to use our slope, our rise over run, and notice how the rise over run here is just one number. So we're going to convert that into a fraction, -3 over 1. So now our rise is a -3, our run is 1. And because our rise is negative, instead of going up, we're going to be going down 3 units. So I'm going to draw a little arrow going down. Okay, and our run is positive. Because it's positive, we're going to go to the right. Okay, now sometimes I'll have kids ask, when do we know to put the negative on top or if it goes on the bottom? Well, it doesn't really matter which one you choose to be negative. I wrote it here where now we have 3 is positive and 1 is negative. It's still a -3, but now our rise is positive. So we're going to go, if we were to use this fraction, we would go up 3, and our run is negative, so that would mean we'd go to the left 1. Okay, and I'm going to show you on here that it's still going to fall on the same line. So starting at this point, we're going to use this slope. We're going to go down 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go to the right 1, 1. So here's our point. I can continue to do that same slope from here. We're going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1. And you'll notice that all points are still fall in the same line. Or I can go back to the origin, the first point that I made. Okay, this was my first point, and do the negative on the 1 and keep the 3 positive. So my rise would be up 3, 1, 2, 3, to the left 1. And notice if my point is here, look at the 3 dots. They're still in the line. So it doesn't matter which way you choose, you'll still get the same line. Sometimes when we run out of space, if our coordinate plane isn't big enough, we want to go in the other direction. And now we draw our line. And that's all for your notes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.